Hey, this is Tyler Jones with The Element, and you're listening to the Son of a Blitch podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I am your host, George Blitch. And guys, I had a great interview today with Tyler Jones. Those in the outdoor industry, you might have heard him or seen him before through The Element. He's got a podcast that he and Casey Smith have been doing for, about 8 years now. And then that's also been a lot of the filming and the hunts that you'll see on the YouTube channel, The Element. And most recently, they have joined teams with the MeatEater family of companies. They're under that MeatEater umbrella now. And so they've done buck truck. They've had a couple different other things going on. They've had some really neat hunts that we've seen in and around the area where they're out here in Texas with some hog hunting. There's some nilgai hunting. And there's a lot more to come. Some turkey hunting season's about to happen. So I'm sure there's some really cool videos with that as well in the works. We talked about Tyler's music career with being the guitarist and singer in Tyler and the Tribe. Some really amazing songs. We dive into a few there. And, we've talked about just kind of his past. He is a man of many talents, a man of faith, a man of just really trying to put the best in whatever he's doing out there in the world. And he's done a phenomenal job. Just super talented guy, great gentleman. And yeah, we just had a great conversation today talking about all the different things he's got going on. So you guys tune in, enjoy, and learn a little bit more about Tyler Jones. Y'all enjoy. Take care. Hey Tyler, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Fantastic. Look, I'm really excited to have you on. I've been following your show, your podcast. I know you kind of in and around Texas, heard a lot of different stories about you, whether it's on the football field or Tyler and the Tribe and your music. And I kind of want to dive into all of this. But as normally with my guests, I'd like to kind of start giving a little bit of background for listeners who might not know much about your history. Talk about where you're from, how you got into hunting and the outdoors lifestyle. And let's talk about maybe the beginning threads of that dream of which you're living so well right now.
Oh, sure, man. I mean, I appreciate the opportunity, George, and just excited to be talking to you. But this is something I wanted to do for a long time. I kind of I grew up on Lake Fork, which is a historically incredible bass fishery, largemouth bass in Northeast Texas, one of the best in the world. And at the time when I was growing up in getting interested in this stuff in the 90s, I mean, that was like the heyday of Lake Fork. I mean, it was like the way they thought the world record was going to be broken there. They thought this is, every fish that was caught was like, man, it's fixing to happen there at Fork. And there was this perfect storm, which really is interesting. I mean, I'll probably try to keep the rabbit trails to a minimum, but like the lake sits like it's in three counties. And a lot of times, KC and I talk about this a lot. KC is my partner at the Element, and he and I talk about stuff like this a lot. But a lot of times, what a human boundary that is set is it's actually set on some sort of geographical or some sort of boundary that like was noticeable. When people started setting these boundaries that maybe we don't notice today as much because of maybe the land is aging or whatever, but like or maybe we're looking at our phones too much or whatever, but like with to me it makes sense because I look at this lake as like this kind of iron ore east side and the west side as being in a different kind of thing here in a different county, and then some of the north stuff being different, but there's two big sections that come into it. Anyway, it's a really cool interesting lake, and I'd like to actually do some video work on it sometime and talk about some of the origins of that lake and that kind of thing. But this was a place I grew up, and it was a public lake, so awesome bass fishery, underrated other fisheries like crappie and catfish. And I spent summers just catfishing like every day. My dad has a fishing lodge on the lake and has had it since 1993, I believe is when he bought it. So it's 30 years old as a lodge, and my dad's had it the whole time. So I grew up there, and in the summers, I just would walk this retainer wall and just sight fish, catfish, like big ones, man, like 10 pounders, you know.
Oh,
I
nice.
actually at one point held the state record blue cat on a fly. It was a 845, 8.45 that I caught on a fly rod, sight casting to it with a brown woolly bugger. And it was an interesting thing. Like we had fish in our dock too, but they would not bite flies in the dock. But out on the wall, they get in these holes for whatever reason. They would bite. But anyway, I caught that there. Spent a bunch of time duck hunting on the lake growing up, and so like we used to have really good grass beds, and I would stalk these ducks like across a mowed St. Augustine yard, at the lodge there, and there would be hundreds of canvasbacks out there. I mean, no lie, like probably 200 to 300 canvasbacks out in front. And, we'd have bluebills and ringnecks and sometimes we had mallards and stuff like that. In fact, you may have seen one of my recent Instagram posts. So I stalked those at the lodge, those mallards. And, when they got up, they get up into a north wind. When I had a north wind, they would float back into the lodge, into the, property. So I didn't have to, get a boat out or anything.
Right.
And so I picked three drakes and smoked all of them, and one of them came back. And as it's floating in, it's sticking its legs up like this, it's floating on its back, and it's floating just slowly in the north wind coming towards me. And I was like, there is no way that thing is double banded, but I think I see two bands on that thing, and it was a double banded mallard drake. It had $100 reward band from. This is the only time Washington D.C. probably will ever pay me any money, but it was the first and only time. But it was cool growing up doing that kind of stuff and being there and to hear the guide stories. I mean, to me,
Sure.
growing up, Lake Fork guides were like they might as well have been the pro fishermen. Like they might as well have been the same category to me. And they were good at telling stories, right? I mean, that's the whole thing about fishing. But um, it was really cool growing up there. So that's kind of where for hunting and stuff like that, that's where I kind of really just spent a lot of time outdoors. My dad got me into it, and I also started there at the lodge filming. I found some old videos recently with my dad had this big old VHS like tank that goes on your shoulder,
Oh, yeah.
and I used to video with that at the lodge there. And besides James Bond movies, I made some actual outdoor movies, and I got a funny one I saw recently where there's just a single teal sitting out there in like September or whatever, and on this grass bed, and I'm just like 30 yards away videoing this thing, just talking about it, narrating it like some sort of Discovery Channel thing or whatever. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old maybe, so that started for me early on, and it's always been something I wanted to do. And there's a million more things I could say about it, but I've talked a lot here already, and I just want to say that whole thing has played out now. It's been a big blessing to do that for a living. It's something that I always thought I could do and I wanted to pursue and did. But it's different and more of a blessing probably than I thought it would be.
Well, I mean, it's amazing what kind of you put in when you were a kid, your loves, your passions. And I mean, you talked about this. I've heard you in different interviews. You talk about the dream, and like whenever you met up with, KC, and you guys, like you said, he got the dream, and however maybe you formulated that, or however it was maybe vague, but you knew the direction you wanted to go into. Obviously, those steps along the way, that time of prayer of being able to see your this chosen path, all the things that come to you when you're doing the right thing, and you see those those next steps unfold. It might not have been known the day before, but you kind of have continually had this and move forward. And I think it's just so incredible to be, sitting back and seeing a chronological order of like you at a little kid with a video camera and doing this, and then now all of a sudden, you're here with MeatEater. Obviously, you had success alone with, Element podcast, and then filming these shows. I guess I'll kind of touch on for a minute. One of the videos that I think maybe your largest viewed there too, talking about the buck from the ranch. And I wanted to, have you spend a little bit of time maybe chatting about that real quick. And I know you probably talked about it, maybe ad nauseum on some of the other shows, but I think it's like the power of perseverance. And, these days you're sitting here, you're reading scriptures, when you get in there early in the morning and, just talk about like that very last minute thing. If you could maybe walk us up a little bit, because it was kind of a dream of yours to be able to have an amazing buck on your own property. And, I think that there's a reason, even though it's a long video and I suggest everyone check it out, hour and 20 something minutes, hour and 30. I think it's a wonderful. I think you had like 18 or 19 sits. Let's just talk about that real quick, because I think that's something that I think everyone should check it out. It's a wonderful video.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's kind of was a perfect storm that we didn't know was happening when we're going through it. This was 2020, so obviously a time where the world was just like absolutely in distress, and just nobody knew what was going on, and so and then from a element perspective, we'd been doing this. We started filming, Casey and I, 2016 was when we started filming deer hunting, and it was just me just following him around, real informal. I had an idea that like this was something I wanted to do.
Mhm.
He was, this is something I appreciate about KC and his family that I'll tell you why. His family's been pretty simple, and I don't mean to say that in a negative sense at all, because that's what I admire about them is like they can go in their day to day and just be normal dudes, and have community within whatever that community is, that's small, and family and those kind of things, and still honor and glorify God through that, and not really want for anything, and it's okay to just like work a good job, spend 8 hours out there, go back to your family and do the thing, and you're not pursuing anything, and you're not working overtime, you're not working, the whole kind of plague of the entrepreneur is that they say that's the only person who will work 80 hours so they don't have to work 40, and that's what I've had to do, and I
Yeah,
look back at it, I'm like, sometimes there's some sort of sacrifice with that at every level, I mean, you think
sure.
about these athletes, and everybody's like, oh, it'd be great to be, Patrick Mahomes or whatever. But it's like, man, at some point, Tom Brady has sacrificed a lot, stuff that I would not sacrifice, to be the greatest of all time. I mean, and so I admire what he does. I loved watching him play football, but
Sure.
I would, it would be hard for me to not do that if I was him in the moment pursuing something, right? You're like, man, just a little bit more work and I'm the best of all time, It'd be hard not to do that. But I am actually very glad that I didn't actually encounter that, so that I can look back with a different perspective and see. But anyway, that's one thing I like about KC and his family, especially the patriarchs of his family, that they do really well is just like live in the moment, and so, and that's what we were doing at the time. But at the same
Mhm.
time, I was really like, I had been pursuing this thing for several years. My church was wanting to hire me as a worship leader. And they weren't going to pay me very much, which is fine, because I understand we got a bunch of blue collar people at our church, and we just don't, tithes are what they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was one of those things where I was like, man, like I have this dream. I think I can do some decent stuff here and make a career, but I also like got this pressure of like, hey, you're getting older, and you need to provide for our family too, from my wife a little bit, she was super strong through the whole thing, because I pursued music, as
Yep.
for a long time before that. So anyway, I spent 18 hunts over the course of maybe like 20 days or something like that, during kind of the COVID era. And I actually had COVID when I started hunting this year. I'd seen him on a new property that I had bought that I was going to build a house on. And I had seen him one morning. I just pulled up on the hill, and he was just in the back of it. Small property, and just rut fest, bucks everywhere. Hunted him for like, like I said, 18 days. And the interesting thing is I like you said, I prayed a lot, because it was like Groundhog Day. I just get up every day, leave. I was actually staying with my parents at the fishing lodge, because during
Mhm.
the winter they don't have a whole lot of guests, and we just I would take off and go over here, 15 minutes, sit in the truck for 5 minutes, get real warm, walk up the hill and go sit in the stand. And then I would have like, more and more time, a minute more every day or whatever, to sit there and pray in the dark or whatever. And so I did that kind of stuff. And and it was a good time. But I did a lot of praying about like, hey, is this the path that I need to be on? Not like a send me a sign thing or anything, but just lead me where you want me. And
Yeah.
I ended up on. The church gave me an ultimatum of like by December we need to kind of know if this is something you want to do or not.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, so I ended up shooting that ranch buck on November 30th, and it was the fourth buck I'd shot that year, and I actually shot a fifth one in later December as well, and it was just like, but at that moment is where I was like, okay, I think this is me being led where I need to be, and so uh, it's worked out so far. But every day is a blessing. I can't say that you don't know what tomorrow holds. You get fired in a heartbeat, and especially in this economy. So, that's it doesn't scare me though, because I think you kind of understand. But I
Mhm.
can figure something out. If I got to go work at the local hardware store, then I'll go do it. Whatever
Yeah.
I got to do. But
Yep.
yeah, we live in America, man. We got a lot of opportunity.
We sure do. No, and
So
that's and you kind of talk about and you kind of drop some breadcrumbs there of your past of like the idea that like D1 college athlete, you're at SMU, you're a standout safety, and you're playing and like the dedication and time that goes into that. I mean, for those who don't know, sometimes you have 3, 4 hours a day of just doing that, plus your studies, plus if you're doing a job or doing anything else, you got friendship, your social. There's a lot of things going on, but there's a lot of work to do that and a lot of dedication. And then, you talk about your music and your career there. And I mean, you still got music coming out. Like I know you got a single drop in February 9th. And you still have, wonderful stuff. And I want to dive into one particular song in a minute. But the idea was that you've kind of you've had success in this element, this element, like, and then this other one, but you've been able to ride that success and whenever it's time to move on to another track or keep them concurrent, like I feel like no matter what you do, you have the drive, the discipline to do that. Obviously, we've seen your discipline and what you've done it with your show and your podcast and all the hard work you guys put into that. And I think that that's something that it's very true. This something could end tomorrow. Something could change. Maybe this whole industry of the outdoor, lifestyle starts. I don't think it's going to fade, but if something does, it's okay. You're going to pick up and you're going to land on your feet and you're going to work hard, whatever that is. So I like that perspective. Diving into your music career a little bit there too. I'd like to chat. I mean, you Tyler in the Tribe, you're playing guitar, you're singing, you're writing a lot of these songs. Tell me a little bit about the band and about kind of what your history has been. I mean, you guys played together a long time. I don't know if there's different players along the timeline, but obviously you're still putting out some new stuff. Is there some shows that might be coming out at some point in time? Is there going to be an album at some point? You still working on things? You still writing? Kind of walk us through a few minutes of your kind of music career and what you got kicking.
sure, man. Thanks for the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
So I actually started playing guitar in high school with some buddies, and then I kind of like the only one that kind of carried through for very long. I guess really once we got to college, especially, and and so I'm in college. I'm still playing. Like I want nothing more than to be a musician. I love it. I love writing. I love the music, the way that it makes me feel, and all this stuff. So I end up meeting a guy on the football team there at SMU, who was I don't think he ever played it down, but he was hilarious. Just a funny guy that pretty much everybody loved. And he actually had recorded some music as a songwriter, prior to me meeting him. And I had a friend that kind of made the connection for both of us there, that we're all on the football team. And anyway, so his name's Clay, and Clay and I kind of hit it off, and we ended up practicing a lot late at night. So I mean, it was tough times, which I loved it though. I was doing what I want to do. I had a lot more energy at the time. But uh, I would like end up after, if I had study hall or like we'd have meetings after practice or whatever, like I'd go grab something to eat and I'd go over to his apartment or whatever. And he was like right on the edge. It was in East Dallas, and it was right on the edge of like, I mean, the ghetto pretty much. I mean, it was rough. Like it was the last house of new development, on that street. going east for a ways. I mean, there was like a lot of drug stuff going on around us, and I mean, it was a rough neighborhood, but it also lent to us like being able to play music fairly loud and nobody being affected by it. It was perfect.
Yeah, you're
So
being drowned out over there by all those things that are
yeah,
happening.
yeah, for sure. So we played music, a lot at night from, maybe 7 o'clock till midnight or whatever. And then we get back up and go lift weights and do the whole thing over
Uh-huh.
again. But it was a lot of fun. And then I ended up touring with him out of college. And we were picking up a lot of steam, and I won't go into this whole story because it's kind of aside from it, but basically he was one of the crazier people I ever met, and I loved him, and I love him still, but he was crazy, and he essentially he was a big part of what he had done at one point, got us blacklisted from like a ton of venues. We're playing with a ton of artists, and I won't go into that, like I said, but
Yeah.
essentially that launched Tyler and the Tribe.
Yep.
And so, because I was like, well, I have some songs, and I had recently moved to Sulphur Springs, Texas, and met these dudes that were like, oh, probably 4 or 5 years younger than me, and they were like, the drummer was really good. Um, the other guys were like, they had potential, but they weren't great. So I had some stuff in my studio upstairs at my house that I'd bought during the recession, and we started kind of just recording some music, and I actually recorded an album with them and their college buddies, all 6-part band or whatever, doing their deal. And then eventually I was like, man, would you guys want to play with me or whatever? And so we did, and we started jamming a little bit. Next thing you know, I'm like, man, I got a lot of connections from the last band. I mean, if y'all want to tour some. And they were like, oh yeah, for sure. So take off and start touring, and picked up steam again fairly quickly. I was a little more determined. I had learned a lot of things about like what not to do with clay,
Yep.
and I was kind of determined to like, and focused really really well. And we played a lot of great shows over the years. I had the manager that managed clay. He took us on and helped us kind of grow. He booked a lot for us and this kind of thing. And we got to where we were playing, probably 110 shows a year. And just, the industry that we were in, the circles we were in, was a little different than what I actually like, the music we actually produced a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Which our music it's kind of a big spectrum. If I was smart, and, I would do things a little more like I did the Element, where like, I was like, okay, well, white-tailed deer, people like them. Let's go kill a bunch of white-tailed deer because it's real fun, it's accessible, and we're going to focus on that kind of niche,
Right.
And I should have done that with music, but I didn't. I was like, oh man, I'm an artist. Like, I got to produce this wild, crazy rock song over here and this acoustic deal over here that's like just nothing, and I'll sing this one with more twang and sing this one more like, Dave Grohl would and the Foo Fighters,
Yeah.
and eventually, it became kind of hard for us to fit in. We had the connections, we just didn't like always translate. I can remember a time I played with a guy named Randy Rogers, who, you probably know, and a lot of people maybe listening may know as well, but very like indie country kind of guy. I mean, pretty country-fied, but it would fit into the red dirt country or Texas country of like the 2000s that people talk about. And we're playing down in Uvalde, Texas. And there's a pretty big place. I think it had like 1,200 cap. It was like 1,200 cap venue, and it's like sold out, And we had driven a red van that I'd bought for like $1,500. That was like missing it was missing one of the cylinders was missing every so often, and it was just bad. We drove like 7.5 hours down there to play for $200 because we're going to open for Randy. And we get down there and we start playing. We play a couple songs, and we wanted to come out with energy. We're young guys, whatever. Well, we end up like playing this one song that's kind of riff based rock that I had written, and I mean, it was pretty heavy. And this crowd is here. First of all, there's a lot of like Latinos or Hispanics, and a lot of just like super country white folk there. And they're all in this place down in South Texas, to hear Randy Rogers. And we come playing this riff based rock, that's real heavy. And I was like, oh, we're about to blow them out of the water or whatever. It's gonna be awesome, And dude, they were like, there was this like this bro group of dudes that were just like, I can remember them right over here, kind of like stage right and about in the middle of the dance floor or whatever. And they started chanting Randy Rogers, like as soon as we got done. And I can remember I just like walked with the mic and said, thanks, guys, feels good. And there was a bunch of people that didn't share that sentiment in that crowd,
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of like a motif I've had to kind of continue to realize, especially with YouTube and stuff, is like there's always a vocal group, and they really don't usually, represent exactly what's going on out there. So, but anyway, so it was that's kind of like the early stages. We end up, we played a big festival called Texas Thunder, and it was out in Midland. A bunch of big country artists that people would recognize, like Brad Paisley and Florida Georgia Line and Big and Rich and those kind of bands. Those are the headliners, and we're playing like a side stage, but it was, it was a big deal. And
yeah, you're there. You're playing down the bill. Yeah,
for sure. We were pumped, and we had done some pretty big shows at the time. We had, we actually were pursuing more of a, like we really wanted to be more in Nashville because we thought we had a broader sound than the regional sound a little bit. And so that was where we wanted to be. Right. Well, we played this big show. It's kind of a big deal. My wife was pregnant and fixing to have kids, our kid. And so, I had driven her car and was going to go back and meet her. So there was two guys in the van, and no, three guys. One was a tour manager, and, our guitar player was driving. I'm trying not to make this too long a story, but essentially he gets in a wreck on the way home, totals the van. He was kind of already, I think he had kind of felt a little bit like an outcast in the band a little bit. We were all friends. He just kind of, there was a little rub, I think, between, because I play lead guitar too, and I never tried to like make it. I wanted to split things up really evenly. Yeah. But anyway, so I think with that wreck and just all the things that were going on in his life, I think he just decided like, man, I'm not loving this, And so he decided to take off. The guys in the band were really good friends with him. And so they were like, man, I just don't want to do this without him. And essentially we took like a probably 18-month just hiatus. And it was one of the most depressing times of my life, to be honest, because I pursued this for so long. I mean, it was like 9 years,
Yeah.
And, it just all failed and fell flat on its face, and I couldn't do anything about it. And so we start playing again. Like I said, I'll try not to be too detailed. We start playing again essentially without our guitar player. And long story short, we worked back in, and we playing with a guy that was a guitar player in that band that I recorded when they were in college, and that was friends with them, and I was friends with too. And he decides to jump in and play with us, and we start playing and touring and doing some more music and stuff like that. I had written a whole album called Bright Side of the Earth that released a few years after that we started playing again. And we have been, we've been really good. I mean, it's like the music has been like when we play live, it's incredible. That, Jacob is our new guitar player, but he's been around since, I don't know, 2016 or something, 2017 was, he's been playing with us and recorded all the new music and stuff. And I mean, he's incredible. He's really worked hard to get better at guitar. He does a great job. He nails stuff, and the band sounds incredible with him. So we don't play live a whole lot anymore because COVID kind of squashed that, it made it tough on us, especially as original music, which is what we did. We didn't do cover band stuff too much,
Right.
like if we played 12 songs, we might have 2 covers in it, or whatever. If we did like an hour opening set. So anyway, we've been recording some music. The last few years have been crazy for me, with all the new stuff going on with the element and that kind of thing. So it's taken a back seat, which I hate, but I've played a lot more guitar this year in 2024 than I have in a while. So still riding, still got a bunch of stuff I haven't recorded. It's just kind of expensive. And, I got kids that are growing up and playing sports and that kind of thing. And it just makes it, you got to figure out how to prioritize things, you know. So it's always a
Yeah.
battle.
Yeah, it is. Well, and as a musician myself too, there's those times where maybe the guitar for myself, the drum set maybe is not, it gets a little dusty. You're still having those experiences in that life that you can kind of bring through. It's like always like that first album that a band puts out, right? It's like you've had those whatever it is, 16 to 18 years of life and living, and you've got all this stuff, and then it's like if you're working with the record company, okay, where's the second one? And you're like, hold on, I had a lot of years to draw from, and now it's like and then you can talk about life on the road or whatever. You see a lot of bands that kind of have that sophomore
Hmm.
album kind of thing too, but you pick it back up, and like you said too, it's about prioritizing. And it sometimes it's just hard to juggle all these irons in the fire because you've had a lot. And yeah, I'm excited to hear the new track, excited to hear the new music, and when you get a tour kicking again, let us know and we'll promote it, and then also make sure that we show up and check it out live, man. You guys got some great tunes. Really love it. In fact, if you see your count of plays, the Born for a Time Such as This, if it has spiked and someone has listened to it 100 times in the last week, that'd be me. Um, when you first, I think like I started following you on Instagram and kind of I'm fairly new to it in a spectrum, but like I got in and I was checking out Time of the Tribe and I saw that particular song, and you have a clip that you had of Dave Grohl, Foo Fighters, looking at Taylor Hawkins, the drummer who has since passed away, and in that video you have that queued up and you said, I was talking about this particular moment when I wrote this song, and I want you to dive into that. I have some personal connection with Dave and Taylor, but that song, man, it raises the hair on the back of my neck. I get the feels, my eyes start to well up. Like it's such a beautiful song. And thinking about that particular moment, and then thinking about Dave when he's pausing, he's playing at the Taylor Memorial, and just like, the silence and then the cheers of like I picture these moments and these snapshots in time, and I really would like for you to lay it out. And I mean that is a phenomenal song. So when did you get inspired to write it? Putting that song together. If you can just kind of maybe chat about it for a minute, because I think it's just a magnificent song, and I'm
Oh,
glad you wrote it,
thanks,
man.
man. Thank you. I mean, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. It's I am an emotional person, man. So like like my wife is kind of the strong one most of the time, and I'm like I fall apart all the time, That's just the way I am,
Same.
man, and I can't really do a whole lot about it, because it just happens, man. I cry a lot, because things mean a lot to me, and people, and so anyway, that moment is a moment from live at Wembley. And basically, to me, what it looks like is happening is they're singing Best of You, which is probably my favorite song ever, and one of the best rock songs of all time. Like most people would agree that are rock fans, And
Yeah.
so uh, anyway, he's Dave's singing it, and he's been like all over the stage. There's like probably an 80-yard catwalk that he's been running up and down. I mean, he's done this for 2 hours probably, and he screams and just shreds his voice all night, and in between lines, like not even while he's singing, in between songs and this kind of thing. He's just a powerful singer, powerful entertainer, and he gets to this moment where there's this kind of like breakdown and then this build back up in that song where it's like it takes a lot. And I know this personally, there's this weird thing that happens in a 3 to 5 minute song where like by the end of the song, there's something that happens like cannot get the notes, you can't hit the notes as well. But like you take a pause for a couple minutes and don't do anything, you play a musical deal or whatever and transition into the next song, you're okay until later in that song or whatever, and your voice gets tired. But it's a weird thing that happens within that song, and this is happening to him at the time where he's like not able to hit the notes essentially. I mean, it's high, it's screaming, he's worn out, and the rain is like coming down and they're wet and their hair is like soaked, and here's this guy who's like just a rock icon, and then his buddy behind him who is like his best friend, and he's also a rock drummer icon, especially, drumming for one of the best rock drummers in the world. And he looks back at him, Dave looks back at him, and you can see Taylor kind of be like a little nod. And it's like, you got this, dude. You can do this, And it's just this like beautiful moment where, two buddies are giving a lot of, support to each other and leaning on each other, and I'm thinking about it. It's a weird, I wrote this song in a weird way where like, it almost is just so abstract. Like I hate to even explain it because it seems so weird, and I don't like. It feels normal to me because it's just the way I think about it. But it also seems weird when I vocalize what it's about. But essentially, it's like I think about that moment. But more than anything, it's like this thing happened, and I don't like celebrity deaths. Don't really affect me that much. I don't really like even like there's not a whole lot of people that I consider in my point of view a celebrity, like
Yeah.
that so but like when he passed, man, that was like a big hit. That was like a part of my childhood like going away, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Part of my high school experience, just kind of like going to the wayside. And so it affected me, and I was sad for a few days, but I write this song where like I think about it like, okay, there's this big thing in the news right now where the drummer has died for an iconic rock group, and it's the best friend of the lead singer. What's the lead singer going to say? Everybody wants to know, how's Dave going to react, right? And so for me, I don't really know a whole lot about these people, so it's just me being introspective and thinking about like, how would I charge myself to behave in this moment? Not necessarily, but at the same time, like I'm writing it as if I'm writing to Dave.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's my charge to you, as if he would ever hear it. You know what I mean? And so essentially, it's like you have an opportunity now to kind of stand in the way of like, hey, here is something that like a guy who has wealth and is good at something and loved by so many people can still just die. You know what I mean? And it can be over, like we were talking about earlier. Things can be over in a moment, right? And even like for Dave, like it's unsure as to what was going to happen in that moment, like whether they're going to carry on or not or whatever,
Yeah.
probably. So much just it just wrecked their world, And so you have this opportunity to say like, well, how are you going to deal with this? Because that's what everybody's looking at. They're looking at how is Dave going to deal with this? And to me, I was reading at the time. I was reading Esther, the book of Esther in the Bible, and there's a really powerful moment there that a lot of people have put quotes out about and this and that. But essentially, in 4:14, Mordecai says, because Esther is scared that she's going to die if she speaks up, and Mordecai is like, well, maybe this is the moment that you were born for. This is the time that you were born to stand between evil and good, and to say something. So it's just a powerful, powerful moment in the Bible as well. So I just at the time that was like my hook line in the song, and it was like charging Dave, like, hey, this is the time you were born for. Like you need to say something about life and death. You know what I mean? Like the two things that are assured of all of us that are alive and that will die. So I'm not like I'm intense, man, but I don't mean to be intense towards him or condemning or anything like that. It's just like, it was just a moment that I was thinking I can write a song about this as if this is how I feel, whatever. It's not that I would ever like think any less of Dave if he handled it a certain way. And it certainly seems like he's handled it well. So anyway, that's kind of how the song came to fruition. And I had a bunch of music written for the song before I ever wrote the melody and stuff like that. Like the intro, which is it's like this pattern of guitar, but it happens over two different chords, but it's the exact same pattern of guitar. And then I had like the change in like the time signature as well that happens throughout the middle. Like I had already written these parts to go together, which it kind of modulates to a different different key during that moment. But that chord is within yeah, like it just works really well. I'm not like I don't know a ton about music. I'm all self-taught, you know. But I was like, I did struggle a little bit, like putting those two parts together and what chords needed to bridge into, so that it didn't just sound like two songs that shouldn't have gone together. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
a lot of backstory there for you. I'm pretty verbose, man, sometimes, so I'm sorry if I'm going too long on this stuff, man.
Dude, there's no apologies there. That song, like, I mean, when Taylor passed, like it hit me too. Like, and it was kind of, I had the same thing with Nirvana, man. I remember going and seeing them in December of '93, and it happened to be that you know, Kurt played. They walk out, and then one of the stage guys grabs a pick from his mic stand and throws it out. I get my hand on top of it. Next thing I know, this adult, I'm like 14 then, hits me in the head. I kind of black out, kind of. I'm like trying to figure out what's up. Next thing I know, the police officers are grabbing us, bringing us backstage, and it's like, "Do you have a parent here? Do you want to press charges?" And I'm like still disoriented. And I look over, and here comes Kurt and Dave Grohl, and they're coming to check on me. And Kurt grabs the guitar pick that he played the whole show with, hands it over to me, and Dave's like, "Hey, hold on, let me get you some stuff." Got me some backstage paraphernalia, and they checked on me and wanted to make sure they were fine. And I was like, ever since that moment, I was like, there's that connection to where I'm always like, this guy is something super special, both of them. And then when Nirvana passed, then it was like, you know, it's rock and drummer, man. Those guys were like royalty for that. And then later on down the road, ended up getting to meet Taylor and hanging out with him when he did his tour with Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Riders back in
Mhm.
like '06, '07, place where there's like 18 people and probably two people know who it is. They're just like a local bar in Beaumont, man. It's like, and my buddy and I were like, here, we're helping them set up and everything and talking to them. And I've had all these connections and we had all these conversations and friends we knew. And I had like a very real, like, personal connection to these guys. And although it hadn't been long hanging out, it's not like we're buds, but there was something to me that both times, like when those things happened, I always felt like, what's that like for him? Like, what's that like for Dave? And that particular day, I remember listening to your song and it was just waterworks, man, and just all over again. And Meg's like, my wife's like, you okay? And I was like, I remember I went and got some of the drumsticks that Taylor gave me and took a picture and just put a screenshot up about like, you know, kind of a nod to him. And, you know, those things that, it's kind of a stranger, but man, those were very powerful moments. And it's that song. I still think about that moment and think about what it must be like for him to turn around and not see him anymore. And so, I don't know. I'm very connected to that tune now, man. I'm loving it and playing the heck out of it. So I might break Spotify. I apologize in advance if that
Thanks, man.
happens. But no, you write some amazing tunes, and it's a really nice nod to Foo Fighters and your drummer. I got to give him credit there too. Sounds like there's a lot of respect and nods to Foo and to Taylor there. It's a
Yeah,
great tune.
he's man. That's what we wanted, you know. That my drummer is also a huge Foo Fighters fan, and I mean, he was one of the first. Maybe he was the first person I probably texted when I found out that
Yeah,
Taylor passed, you know, um, and because I mean, a lot of his style has come from that influence, and so then when we went in to record it, it was like, dude, this has got, you know, Jordan is his name. This has got you written all over it, dude. Like
yep,
you just do what, you know, do what's you, but also what's Taylor, man. And that's what
yeah,
he wanted to do. Was, I mean, everything he did was just, he's a man, he's such a good dude. I love Jordan. And he just like, he's very humble. Because he never wanted to do drum solos, and I was like, man, I kind of need you to, because I'm tired of singing, you know. But he wouldn't
give
do
me a
them, you
break.
know.
Yeah,
But he's so talented. I mean, he could have done a lot. I mean, he's incredible, man. And like just some like you can hear the hi-hat clutches he does and stuff in there. I mean, he's
yeah,
just like he's so talented and just also so humble. And why I say that is because he really just wanted, he always wants what's best for the song. And
yeah.
he thinks like if he thinks he can emulate somebody, he's like, I don't have to make my own style or be my own person. It's like I'll give a nod to this guy because, you know, he influenced me or whatever. And so it turned out really great. I think he always does a great job on the drums.
Indeed. No, it's a great nod. And I like too in the music too, you kind of talk about that breakdown moment before musical breakdown, that moment where like when they had to take a pause before they go in that, and like, you know, that was kind of a source of inspiration. And then even within that song, you guys have a build up right at that 4 minute mark, man, where it just kind of like it takes a little pause and then brings it back up. And I just love it, man. It's a great one. I'm gonna have the link down below. Everyone has to go listen to that. Make sure you subscribe and follow Tyler and the Tribe as well. Um, we could talk music all day. I want to move into the next thing I want to chat about is like when the Element started, you guys have doing your podcast, your self-filming. Obviously, Casey Smith is a hog killing man. I think he's 3,000 plus now. He used to be hired by the county to go out and take him out and kind of, so there's like all these different things that I admire and follow and things of that nature. But I wanted to kind of really focus down in on the idea of where did you guys, how did this connection with MeatEater? I mean, obviously the MeatEater team and their family has picked up some other folks here in the last couple of years, you guys being one of them in your show, and now you're under that umbrella and got some great exposure and a great team. I mean, wonderful people there. And I kind of wanted to just chat about how that intersection happened and then what that has been like for you having another extra level of springboard behind you guys and your success and your reach. So if you could just maybe touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, man.
Mhm.
So, you know, essentially, and this is why I still just try to stay level headed. And I mean, I don't, dude, when I shoot a deer or whatever, I don't feel like, I just don't feel like it's me, man. Like I try hard, I'm disciplined. Like you said earlier, I'm actually really hard headed. And I don't think those are like great things all the time. Like discipline, sure, but like
Yeah.
hard headedness or, perseverance, not like perseverance would be considered a good word. And I think like, what are you pursuing, is really what more is what denominates, whether perseverance is good or not, so if I'm pursuing, like celebrity or fame or whatever, then I don't think that perseverance is a great thing. So I have to always, and I'm always balancing this stuff. I'm always thinking about like, what am I actually doing? What am I pursuing? And so, um, I have these qualities, but I don't feel like I feel like I'm just given great opportunities sometimes, man. I'll that hard headedness is what kind of has delivered a lot of that, I think, because I'll just stay with something until I'm successful. But at the same time, like I have to look at like my parents are not like they were not wealthy when I was growing up. They weren't poor either. Like we were lower middle class, but like um they still have given like they've sacrificed a lot for me. Like I mean, even just like when I bought that first house that I was talking about, we did the recording in.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I didn't have a down payment because I was fresh out of college, and this is before NIL deals, and uh, I'm newlywed. We don't, and my wife is like still finishing college. I'm turning a band. I'm making like $600 a week, maybe.
A good week.
Actually, I
Yeah.
bet it was less than that. And I know for when we were first married, I didn't even make money in the band. And so just making not a whole lot, got a new, like we were married, uh, when I had my first kid, we were married 13 months. So we had a kid like quick, so things were scary. But my parents this was a good deal on this house during the recession. That was a foreclosure. It needed a lot of work and I was willing to work on it.
Mhm.
But they paid a down payment. And when I sold the house, I offered to pay it back to my dad. He wouldn't let me. And I paid for the house the whole time. I paid every monthly payment, but, like I wouldn't have ever had it without them, and there's
Sure.
just things, man, that like my parents have done, her grandparents especially have done for us, and I just am so thankful. And these are things that people don't have. Like a lot of people don't have parents or grandparents that can give extra to help out. And so I just want to like I want to start this conversation with the disclaimer that like maybe I'm not that special and maybe I just have an opportunity because of some people in my life. And if you don't have those opportunities, then maybe you don't have a chance to just stick your neck out and make no money for a long time because your fallback plan is like your parents will take care of you if you do fall, And I
Yeah.
never had that moment that I really needed. I mean, there was times when I needed money and there was times when my dad would hand me 100 in college or whatever, when
Yeah.
I came home. But like there, I never like was like, hey, I need 5 grand to pay for this or whatever. And, so, but I was close several times, so I just want to make sure that people know that like I am blessed, man. And I have had an opportunity above and beyond what a lot of people have had because they don't have a parachute to fall back into, you know. And
Sure.
so with that being said, now, you know, I was able to, during the element early years, I was able to, you know, we were just so poor, man, like both Casey and I, because he was kind of self-employed carpenter and I was working at my parents' lodge for not a whole lot of money. But you know, it was something.
Hmm.
And we were had flexible schedules, so we are able to do a lot of element stuff too. And then when I sold that house, I took all the money I made on that house and basically took almost, I think it was like, it's going to be 3 or 4 years, 4 years before I was able to pay myself. Um, and I basically spent all the money I made on that house from like a foreclosure, recession, buy and rehab and sell. Like the money I made off of that after selling 8 years later, I pretty much wasted all of it in trying to, like, essentially living expenses while I edited videos on the couch at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was risky, but at the same time, my wife had a decent job as a teacher, which they don't get paid very much, but it's enough. We're pretty simple people. And anyway, so I in those early years, we were able to kind of make it to some different like media summits and these kind of things and these events, just a few here and there, and ATA and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
We meet a guy who's a buddy of mine that worked at Sitka for a while.
Hmm.
And when we met him, he was at Sitka, went to Wild Sheep, and then ended up at MeatEater. And so that was our connection. And again, like I don't feel super like it's not like I just impressed MeatEater or whatever, and that's how it happened because I did something great. It's like I knew a guy that thought, hey, these guys are doing it pretty good in the whitetail space, and MeatEater is kind of a Western deal, but you know we like our whitetail guys, and we need to add a few more. And he went to bat for us. We were able to go do this thing, and the job's been a blessing, but it's also very tough. Like there's this thing where like there's a little more financial stability, but there's like a lot less freedom, and also even like there's this weird thing where MeatEater's like fan base is pretty vastly different a lot of times from me and KC. I mean, we're Texans. We don't sound like a lot of them. We don't even sound like many of the people at the company, you know, or any maybe. And we think of things really practically, very redneck a lot of times, very utilitarian. So you know, some the ways we hunt is like when we go out, I mean, we need to kill something, you know, because for a business thing and for just like this is the way we've always hunted, right? It's not
Right.
I'm not going out to walk in the woods.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, after dinner, I'll walk in the woods with my kids or my wife, and that's fun. You know,
It's a
I'll do
different
it, but
walk. Yeah. Sure.
I'm going hunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The object is to kill something. It's not really to think about Aldo Leopold. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if I want to do that, I can do that in a book at home, you know, or whatever. And you know that's just. I'm not trying to be spiteful or anything when I say that, but like,
No, 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 not at
you know,
all.
that's just it's different. And so we've been received well, and it's that kind of silent majority. I think that I have to keep reminding myself of. But there's also this very vocal group that that loves some of the guys at MeatEater that maybe don't love KC and I. And so when we put a video out on the MeatEater channel, I can't read comments anymore. Like I cannot look at them. It will ruin my whole day, man. And people, I think people don't think that anybody ever reads those things, you know, so they just make these wild comments sometimes. But like I did read them when I first joined, and like I've since just it's been months and months now that I will not. So I'll still read element comments on our YouTube channel,
Uh-huh.
you know, the element YouTube channel, but it's just different. We just attracted a different crowd there, I guess, that aligns more with who we are, you know. So
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to not read those comments in that sense. You know, it's one thing if it's constructive or something like that, but that's normally not the case online, and especially when people decide they're going to leave comments. You know, like some of the stuff I've read on things I posted, like, ouch, why'd you even come on and you put the time to put that negativity out there? Like, someone give that guy a hug. Like, you know, it's like,
dude,
why?
I mean, if somebody, I'm not afraid of like having some sort of discussion about something,
Mm.
which I'm not really trying to do in a YouTube comment anyway.
Yeah,
But it's like when you attack the way I look, or just there's some randomly odd things that come up, and I think what I really like is to have conversations with people in the YouTube comments that are like, "Hey, why are you using that broadhead?" or
yeah,
whatever, and it's like, okay, well, I'll answer this person. They seem like somewhat rational and they're wanting to know, or
yeah.
like, hey, it's a really cool deal that y'all did. And I don't need to I don't need them to tell me how cool I am, but like, this is a cool opportunity on public land in Texas or whatever, maybe, like those are things that I'm like, man, this is the community I want to be a part of,
Yeah.
whereas when it's people just tearing people down, it's just it's a struggle for me. So I've had to scale back on that a lot. YouTube's a wild place, man. It's
It
wild.
is. It is. So, I mean, you've been there for a while. You know what that's like. And especially when you get that next level of exposure with joining a team like that, too, you're going to get that next level of, that many more, those types of comments, but all those other fans. Because I know a lot of people love watching you guys. It's nice to have some representation in the state of Texas and seeing that. I mean, you go elsewhere too, but, getting a little piece of home, your hog hunting and stuff that's, left and right, what we see around here and all throughout Texas, very hog heavy state and different things you're teaching along the way. It's educational, it's informative, and it's fun. And you guys are just good, genuine people, good hearts, and I think it plays well for many audiences. So I see it as multiple success, and I'm glad that there's that other spotlight on there, and gives you a medium for your message and you sharing who you are authentically as well as KC. So those are important things. Before we go, I figure I'd just kind of let people know a couple things that they can check out. Like you guys did a series called The Buck Truck. You're traveling around hunting, and is that going to be? Are we going to see another season of Buck Truck this next year coming up?
So essentially, buck truck is just a title for what we've always done,
Yeah.
essentially. So and there it's different. There is some differences, like what so buck truck was actually something we were assigned to do before we ever even joined MeatEater. So we did when we came up with this idea of buck truck and pitched it to them. We had been in talks about us doing a series for them on whitetail to put on their YouTube channel, and there was no talks of us being hired by them, essentially.
Mhm.
So when we came up with this idea, it was like, okay, we're going to produce this like nothing we've ever done before. We had got two new interns that like had never really run a camera, and we get them in August, and we're starting to hunt in September, and so like we got a crash course for like 2 weeks, and then we take off and go start producing buck truck. So there's some definite like, and people probably don't see the stuff, but I see like, I'm like, man, there's some rough stuff there, but it's cool. And I think people enjoy some of that raw aspect a little bit,
Yeah.
there's, as long as they're not getting sick. But it was a
Too
really
motiony.
cool thing. I mean, it was so much fun to put together. It was the longest, hardest project I've ever put together too, because there was a ton of footage. And instead of doing what we would do is, which is like, okay, when there's like a cool story and an encounter with a deer, whether you kill it or not, if it's like decent footage and we think it can make like a 20-minute video, then let's make a video about it and put it out, let people see that little mini story. And
Yeah.
we thought more along the lines like, okay, we're gonna make a big story around an entire trip, and we're gonna make one video out of it. And I mean, like sometimes, like in our Kansas buck truck, I mean, we could have easily made that two videos probably, because there's two big deer get killed in it. But it makes a really cool long video too. And the entire story really is cool. And I think that we had the challenge there with buck truck was a couple of things was taking five guys on the road, so three camera guys essentially, and most like a lot of public land and going and trying to kill deer on public land on the road. And with KC's help, he had a great season that year. With his help, we killed deer everywhere we went, and it was a great, like I said, a great deal. The other challenge we had was taking, like, we had Clay Newcomb and
Mhm.
Mark Kenyon show up on that, and Tony Peterson show up on that series. And so we take these other storylines, and this was hard for me. It's like I edited the whole thing. I only saw my perspective when I was on the hunt. So going through footage, like I have to figure out, I almost have to watch all the footage of Casey's hunt and Mark's
Multiple
hunt.
times.
Yeah, like to
Yeah.
understand. So then wrapping my mind around that, and then I would put it all on the timeline, and it might be 5 hours. And I'm like, okay, well, we can't put a 5 hour video on MeatEater's YouTube channel. You know, they at the time they wanted us to do like 28 minutes was the top length they want us to do. They come from TV, so
Yep.
they think 22 minutes has to
Yep.
be.
Yep.
They've done that for so long. And then we are like, oh, you know, what's the longest we can do? 28 minutes. And I start editing this stuff, and I'm like, and somehow I talked them into like, it's like maybe 45. And then we put one that was like 52 minutes, you know, whatever. We
Stretch it
worked it
out.
in there, but it ended up great. You know, like the series they thought did really well. It released in May, which is a really bad time to release deer hunting videos. And it still did pretty well. So they were happy. But yeah, that wrapping my mind around that 5 hour storyline, even once I get it down there, I'm like trying to understand what 45 minutes or less looks like or so, you know, like, man, it was the toughest editing thing I'd ever done, man. And luckily or thankfully, we were able to rein it all in, put it all together, and we ended up producing. We were only supposed to do 6 videos. We actually had 7, so you know everything just worked out really well. And I guess what I would say is that going forward, um, in looking at the past, it was what we had done. It was just edited in a bigger, longer format, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's the same thing that we did, and it's the same thing we did this year. But this year, we had a little more. We like kind of split the difference between what we used to do and what we did on Buck Truck, where we're like, the guys have gotten really good on the cameras, really fluent, and they do a really good job. And so now our footage is top notch. Casey and I both had a good year this year. And I think like some of the stories and stuff, we're starting to get better at storytelling. That's been a big point of mine to get better at. Because I think in our generation, man, and I'm sorry if I'm going over your time here.
It's all good, man. Go on.
But I think that I think in our generation, there's a little bit of loss of the ability to tell stories well because of you got to grab people's attention. It's just like
Right.
boom, 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 boom. Like if I don't grab your attention in 5 seconds, like you're out. You know what I mean? And people are used to that now that are growing up. 20-something-year-olds are like,
Sure.
they've been, you know, catered to in that short attention span their whole life. That's what they're used to. And so I noticed this with my band actually. So our youngest member, he's real fast paced kind of guy in his mind, you know, and I noticed that I couldn't tell him stories like he wouldn't grab onto the story. He would like get distracted within seconds if I didn't get out what I was trying to say really quick. So I started talking, like getting out points very quickly. Well, you know, in this video world, you know, that I'm producing videos, I'm like, man, I got to just be able to tell a story better. I got to do it better so that I can keep people's attention for more than 5 seconds. But at the same time, I don't have to like, you know, sell out or whatever too
Yeah.
much on that side of things, you know, or just do stuff that's cheap, you know. So anyway, that's been a big focus of mine. My sister is actually an author and super smart, book smart. She was a valedictorian, you know. And so I've like leaned on her a little bit to try to understand how to write better. She's actually getting her master's right now in I guess English or some sort of it. And so she has like some really high level stuff, and she'll ask me, like we kind of go back and forth because she'll get some ideas from me on certain things, especially in the outdoors. And it's weird how she'll connect these outdoor elements, no pun intended, to like literary elements and write like some sort of dissertation, about it or whatever. So anyway, that's where now like we're trying to make we're pursuing the best whitetail deer hunting video content that has been made. That's what we're trying. That's what our goal is, right? And like I said earlier, like to be the goat, there's sacrifices, right? And so I'm always keeping in mind, like, well, am I sacrificing too much? Because if I am, then I want to back off and maybe it's not worth being the best at this. But honestly, the sports world has just millions and millions and millions of people trying to be the GOAT. The deer hunting world is, there's a lot, but a much smaller pool. So maybe it doesn't take quite as much sacrifice as like to be Tom Brady or to be LeBron or Michael Jordan or whatever. Maybe it doesn't take that. So maybe I can get by with it. And that's what we're pursuing for now, is to try to make the best stuff. When you talk about like the visual elements, the visual cinematic side of things, the storytelling, and then just like the ability to, like, for somebody to leave and be like, man, that was satisfying. I want to go back and watch that again. That's just what we want to do, man. We want people to want to watch deer hunting, because it helps everybody in the hunting industry if people at the end of the day are like, it's actually not. And I think that's the pursuit of MeatEater too. I think MeatEater, probably before we ever started, was that, they wanted to produce something that lots of people could look at and say, that wasn't distasteful. This is a little bit countercultural of, hunting TV in the 90s and 2000s. And, they can leave. And the problem is KC and I are maybe just a little more distasteful sometimes than the MeatEater crew. So try not to be, but I mean, you're kind of a product of the way you grew up, and culturally, Texas is just different than Montana or Michigan or New Jersey or whatever. So
It is, man. Well, you guys, you've done such a wonderful job. I feel like your intention, your focus, your heart, and everything's in the right place. And I think it shines through, man. And it just, it's already amazing content. It's going to continue to get better and better. And I'm just excited to see the journey as it unfolds in the years to come. Before we leave, I had a question. It kind of relates a little bit to maybe what it is you're hoping to do, and that's about your own legacy. I wanted to ask you about, like, what is it that you hope professionally and personally to be able to leave behind, the work you're doing now? Why is it important? What is it that you want to kind of have be the thing that echoes on after you're done, in this, area of your life?
man, yeah, that's a good question. So I'm trying, like, this is a hard one to answer, because it's actually not that hard to answer. I just know that, like, these public platforms, I don't want to feel preachy. I don't want to feel it come off that way. So I apologize if that's the way, but I answer frankly and truthfully, as that's just the way I try to do things. And so, um, you know, for me, the only legacy that matters when I look at things is like spiritually. So I've been thinking about this a lot. I carry a little bit of guilt that my son is 12 and he's never killed a deer. And there's a lot going on there. One thing, I bought him a cheap 410 when he was like 5 and made him shoot it, and he busted his face hard with it. And so, like, since then he's hated any sort of guns, for the most part. He actually likes duck hunting. But it took him a long time to get to where he would shoot without me having to, like, almost threaten him to shoot his gun. And so there's a little bit of that going on. There's a lot of me pursuing a career. So every time I'm hunting, I'm like, I got to have a camera in the woods and I got to film what's going on. And I feel really guilty about that. And so, like, but a big part of my legacy that I intend, the biggest part that I want to, like, carry on is that when when I pass away, man, I want my kids to remember me as somebody who was bold for the gospel, and who would, in every instance, not just on George's podcast or the Element podcast or the MeatEater podcast, proclaim that gospel, but even in those moments when me and one of my kids are, at the convenience store, and I see an opportunity to say, hey, do you know Jesus? And let me tell you a little about it, without being, the guy on the street corner with the megaphone, but more just like, hey, this is a personal thing, and I intend to, like, not just this be a fleeting moment between you and I. This is something that like I take very seriously and relationally. And so that's kind of like that's what I would like my legacy to be for them. I want them to see that like, hey, this is what he believes and this is his lifestyle. This isn't just something that he puts on for TV or whatever, you know. And hunting, it would be great that you know, my son would like to hunt and hunt a bunch. He loves fishing. So, I mean, I already got him hooked there, no pun intended. But like, I mean, the hunting thing is if it's a little bit, he's a lot like me. He doesn't like loud noises too much. I never did when I was a kid. I had, you know, like my mom loves to tell the story about when I was at SeaWorld one time and people were losing their mind about Shamu, you know, or whatever. And I just did this and was like, everybody be quiet.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't take it. So he's kind of like that. And I think the gun thing is kind of hard for him. Yeah, I've been able to get him out with a crossbow some. We just haven't killed one. And so, but that would be like for me, the him to love hunting and fishing and just to know that like they have an emotional but intense but loving dad, you know, that things mean a lot to him and I take things seriously. Like that's probably the most important things kind of in the secular world that I would kind of want them to take away as far as legacy goes. Now, if you're talking maybe like, you know, like a legacy amongst people that don't know me, uh, it would probably that's a hard one to answer. Actually, I don't know if I have an answer for that one. I just don't really think a lot about like what I want people to remember me by that I don't know. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a different kind of thing there too, because
Yeah,
it's a trivial kind of pursuit of you don't really know what they would think otherwise, or if they even
sure.
have some, it's one of those YouTube commenters or whatever. Is it like, who cares? And then some
Yeah,
spins, your
yeah.
family, your friends, the people you work with, your community, your church, those people are the ones who really matter as far as, what you'll respect their thoughts, opinions, feelings, and kind of that is maybe a measure of where you're at as a man of faith, as a hunter, whatever it is. Like, those are the people that those opinions and thoughts that matter. So I like how you put that too. It doesn't really it kind of, in my opinion, it doesn't matter the people you don't know. It's the people
Yeah,
you don't
I
know.
just think
Yeah.
when I think about like, you know, evangelical stuff, it like it just I never am I've never been and I don't know if this is me just like being scared or fearful maybe. I try to think about this a lot, but I don't feel like it is. But I never have been like, man, I need to uh just, you know, go to some random person and you know immediately get into what they believe spiritually and what's going to happen when they die. I'm a lot more like, man, can I get to know this person and they trust that I am who I am? Because nobody trusts anything anymore, you know, especially
Yeah.
with the news, all the news blunders that's happened, you know, in the last 5 years or whatever.
Sure.
It's like nobody trusts anything anymore. We got AI making fake stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So like the only way people are going to trust you, in my opinion, is to be like personally involved with them and to show them that you care. And then that's when, you know, things are, you know, presented that actually change lives, I think, you know. So that's kind of the way I've always been. So I guess going back to what you were saying, it's it's hard to like put any weight on what other people think about you that don't really know you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's important. Well, I really appreciate what you shared and opening up and kind of talking about all sorts of different avenues of your life and beliefs. And I definitely would love to chat with you more. I know you got something going on today. I do as well. I know you've got some really cool things coming up. I know you're going to be hunting here in Texas, doing some turkey hunting with Casey and with Jesse Griffiths, a mutual friend of ours. Can't wait to see that. I know there's some other things coming down the pike too. So I want everyone to go and follow your journey, all the different things you guys are putting out. So if you can kind of just take a quick minute, throw the websites, the handles where people can follow your journey and learn more about you in your hunting world and in music as well, please.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I would say this has been awesome, dude. And I think you're a really good interviewer. And I think people should continue to listen to this podcast if they're listening at this point, because it's you do a really good job, man. You've got things together, man. And you do a great job with this. So I appreciate the opportunity. And
Thank you.
I hope that this journey goes well for you, man. It's it can be tough at times and beat you down emotionally and mentally, but just keep going, man. You do a good job of it. So
Thank you.
appreciate
Well,
having.
talking to people like you, man, that's really what it's all about. It's making those connections, those sincere, true connections, and make chatting with great people. It's something that I find personally fulfilling, and I think that your story and other people's that we've chatted with are worth sharing. And I just want to be a conduit for that and that goodness out in the world because we need it. So that
Sure.
means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, for sure. So, really, like what we probably put our most effort into, as you've maybe seen, is the YouTube channel, which, you can see some of our stuff at MeatEater. And in fact, we have to put out, we're kind of not have to, but we are putting out a lot of our best stuff on MeatEater, but not
Mhm.
all of it. But the previous 6 or 7 years, that like has the Element channel has the best of the best of that, So there's a lot of great stuff to look at there. I think we've got 450 or more videos.
Mhm.
I wouldn't watch them all, y'all. There's some bad ones. There's some real bad ones, but there's some really good ones too. So, and
Yes.
you'll be able to see those probably based off of view count as much as
Oh
anything.
yeah.
Um, so, but the Element YouTube channel is where I appreciate the most support. If I'm being frank, the more people that subscribe on the Element YouTube channel, the better it looks towards the MeatEater
Sure.
company. For me,
Yeah.
and I just want to, and really, I just want them to know that they made a good move by hiring KC and I. You know what I mean? That's what I just want them to have to know, like, okay, well, we did the right thing here, and we're not like I always hated when I toured. I always hated headlining and it being like February, it being like 10 degrees. Nobody wants to go out. It's icy on the road. And like, you just, you told the guy, you probably thought there'd be 75 to 120 people there, and you end up with 15, and it's like dead. And you got to face that guy at the end of the night that's paying you. And he's like, man, I thought y'all would have a better night. It's hardly worth keeping the place open for, and I'm like, I know, I mean, I'm sorry. I hated disappointing people. And that's kind of the point of me, telling people to subscribe to us, and hopefully MeatEater knows they made a good investment there. But, that you can see some good stuff. The Buck Truck series is on MeatEater
Mhm.
YouTube channel. We're putting out kind of some one-off stuff on the MeatEater YouTube channel as well. A lot of hog hunting stuff, some deer hunting stuff. And it'll continue. We'll have some pronghorn videos and some elk videos come out later this summer on the MeatEater channel and on our channel as well. Still lots of deer hunting stuff. And like you were saying earlier, we do like to teach a little bit.
Mhm.
Uh, and so we'll have like some how-tos and this and that. We canned venison for the first time the other day and made a video about it. So it's kind of like, here's what we did wrong, and here's what how it turned out, and what was right. So some of that kind of stuff. And then the YouTube or the Instagram handle is the Element Wild. So just add wild to the end there, because I think it was going to be a lot of money to buy the Element.
Right.
I think there was a rapper called the Element a while back, maybe, or something like that. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, that wasn't uh, an option for us. But yeah, you can check us out on Facebook if that's easier for you. I don't even know. We dabbled in TikTok, but TikTok's real strict about
Oh yeah.
things getting shot, so I don't think we have anything there. So pretty much, anything, uh, Instagram is a good place, Facebook's a good place, and then YouTube is where we work really hard to bring like the coolest stuff that we can. So
Well, y'all definitely do. And I suggest you guys, all the places you just mentioned, go follow them, have all the links below, and make sure you go to Spotify or wherever, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music, type in Tyler and the Tribe, look for the new tracks. I know you got the other one coming on February 9th. Every
yeah,
time that'll drop, and there'll be many more to come to. Great music. Make sure you guys go check out the track we were talking about, Born for a Time Such as This. Again, I'll have the links down below. It is a phenomenal song. And hey, Tyler, this has been great, man. I really,
yeah,
really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing yourself with all the listeners. And yeah, we can't wait to see what you guys got coming next, man.
yeah. Thanks for inviting me, man. It's been a good time. I forget that I even play music anymore sometimes. So I appreciate the plug. That song is actually the song that's coming is is a song I wrote for my wife for our 10-year anniversary. Which
Nice.
I miss our anniversary every year because it's 1st of October or 2nd of October, and I'm always hunting. So I wrote it as like, and I went and recorded it preemptively so that I could give it to her in an email while I was gone on that trip,
Nice.
which worked out really well for me, except for that to go record it. It was during like it was like early season, and it was like it was not a fun like, hey, I got to go record some music, even though I don't really play music for a living anymore. So and she was not happy in that moment. But I couldn't tell her, I couldn't spoil the
Right,
surprise,
right, right, right.
So, but yeah, that one will be out. It's a different kind of song. It's not something I really intended to release to the public, but the guy recording it for me gave me a discount if I did ever release it. He's like, if you release this, man, I'll give you a discount. So I was like, okay.
All right.
So that's why we're releasing this song. It's a personal song, but I think people will appreciate it too. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on, George, and just promote all the stuff, man. It means a lot.
Great, man. Well, hey, looking forward to meeting up in person someday or in the field. And until that day, you guys take care. Keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for sharing everything.
Yeah, we'll see you, man.
All right. Adios.